I really wanted to introduce the two of you to each other because you have a lot in common. I think that you both come from really similar backgrounds. So maybe we could just start out by introducing yourselves to each other, and then we can see where the overlap is. And maybe if Fred, if you have any questions, you can ask Dane for a little bit of advice because I think he's a little bit ahead of you on the progression scale. So,
Yeah.
and he's just been doing it a little bit longer than you have. The origins are pretty similar. So, Dane, maybe go first and give yourself a little bit of a self introduction, and so that Fred has an idea about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Started lifting and everything in high school. I played football. Prior to that, I had done just about everything. I ran a lot and everything actually as a kid. When I was 10, 12 years old, I'd do 5Ks, 10Ks, whatever. But after that was just to get heavily into sports. Got into bodybuilding in 2010-ish. Did that for about 5 years, pretty heavy. Got into powerlifting in 2015-ish, and ended up doing that quite a bit. I had gone pro as an NPAA bodybuilder, and then as a powerlifter, which I did for, like I said, 5 years. I set many world records, top five in the world in two different weight classes of all time as a raw powerlifter. So, yeah, by the end of it, I was a little over 300 pounds, squatting a little over 800 pounds raw, benching 540, and deadlifting 887 was my best. And yeah, decided I wanted to transition a little bit, away from something that was going to be as impactful on my joints and into something that, I thought would be a little bit more sustainable long term and a little bit healthier. I started running in 2021, I think, and did my first marathon. No, it was 2022 because I did my first marathon in 2023. I was still nearly 300 pounds.
Wow.
It was a very long, grueling process. So it was, yeah, 5 hours, 51 minutes for that. And later that year, so towards the end of 2023, I decided I was going to lose some weight. And so in about an 8 month span, I lost a little over 80 pounds. So now I sit kind of in the high 220s, sometimes 230, but kind of in that range. And I've been working with MK since May of last year. So I guess that's been 9-ish months now, something like that. And yeah, we've made a lot more progress than I ever thought would be possible. So.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's it's hilarious because we're kind of like on the same roads, but not in the same achievement level. But yeah, I have a very similar story because I grew up playing sports as a kid. I played Pop Warner football when I was a child in middle school. Um, I did boxing for a while at the same time whenever football season was not around. And then got into powerlifting, I want to say like seventh grade with my football coach. And that was trying to get me ready for high school because I'm 5'7". So he was like, you got to be super strong to get onto the starting lineup. So that's how I got into powerlifting. Did that for I want to say until I got into the Navy. Track and field in high school, which was where I was introduced to running, but more the sprinting. Like I didn't do anything past 800 meters. They wouldn't allow it. So I would do indoor and outdoor track and field, javelin, discus, shot put, and then all the sprints, 200 meter, 400 meter, and the 800 meter. And that was all prep for football season, really. And then I went into the service right after high school, and so all that kind of got discontinued, because you kind of have to follow their regulations. And so, but towards the end of my contract in 2003, I started training again, powerlifting, because I had about a year, a little under 2 years at that time to get out. So I tried to get back into the powerlifting world, and then I did a competition in 2004, and I hurt myself, trying to do more than maybe what I should have, right? So I hurt my back, and then I couldn't recover from that injury. I kept getting these crazy muscular spasms in my lower back, and it was like impossible to deadlift heavy or anything like that. So that's how I got into bodybuilding, just like you. And then so I started doing bodybuilding seriously around 2013. After I was able to get my back kind of sort of not going into spasm like every 5 seconds. And so I did my first bodybuilding show in 2015. So that was very different than the powerlifting world for sure, and a totally different world with the dieting and everything else. That was a mess. Um, and so I did that for a little bit, and uh, and then that's it. And then that was kind of overwhelming for me, the constant dieting and prepping meals, and it's just very 24/7, if that
For
makes any
sure.
sense, you know,
Oh, absolutely.
because yeah, because like in the powerlifting world, as long as you're doing your workouts and you're doing your, you're hitting your goals between your micro and macro cycles and stuff like that, everything's golden. But in bodybuilding, my Lord, it's more outside than inside the gym.
Mhm.
So it's hard to do with a family and everything else. I just very difficult. So anyway, that went down the drain. And so that's when I started running, because running was easy. I could do it early in the morning while the family is sleeping. And then I ran into some kidney stone problems. I kept getting kidney stones like crazy, and I couldn't go past like 10 miles as far as like volume in one run. Had to figure that out, and it was in my face the whole time. But the doctors, when I had to go to a specialist, they thought it was diet. And then at the end of the day, my son's like, "Oh, how come you didn't get any kidney stones when you were bodybuilding?" Because I was doing the gym 2 times, sometimes 3 times. And then, of course, the key was the water. I was drinking like a gallon and a half, 2 gallons a day. So I was like, that's what it is. So I started doing that. And so I'm finally able to get the weekly mileage into the higher ranges than before. Right now, I'm hitting like late 30s, early 40s for the mileage. So for that's been a big achievement. But yeah, so kind of like similar roads, but just not at that level. Like I haven't been able to do that yet. I've done half marathon. That's the longest distance I've done so far as far as a race.
Mhm.
And then as far as running, my furthest long run has been 17 miles. I ran into All Heart's channel, I want to say like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, maybe
Okay.
something like that. And I started seeing all the stuff, and I was so motivated by the Mike and his family. It was hilarious. And I found out, when they mentioned the Patreon and all that, and I was like, man, that's cool. I want to support that. So that's how we got into communication through the chat at All Heart, and then that's how all this came up. And when he mentioned you, I got excited about it because I have a lot of questions on how how to get myself to that next level, and I think you would understand me more than anyone. In order for me to have consistent weight loss, 1 to 2 pounds a week, something like that, I got to bring the carbs low.
Mhm.
But God, it is a struggle bus to do the runs because my legs will feel so heavy,
Mhm.
and it's like I don't know if it's a full mental game, but since I don't feel the same as when I do fuel, um it just feels like I got to work a lot harder. Just all those things uh, is where I'm just like stuck under the bus. And I think
Yeah.
with you saying 80 pounds in 8 months, that is amazing. I just don't know how, like, yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely during that time, my caloric intake was fairly low for the amount of activity that I was doing. One thing that I did have to change when I'm looking at my macronutrient profile from my bodybuilding days to running was, my prioritization of which macronutrients are most important. So when I was bodybuilding, it was always I'm losing weight, like keep the protein fairly high, a gram
Yeah.
per pound of body weight,
Right, right.
keep my fats at 20 to 30% of total caloric intake. And then, the rest was carbohydrates. And kind of I brought my carbohydrates down as my calories came down. So the other numbers stayed relatively static, but carbs came down. Now, in dieting for running, it was a bit different because you mentioned fueling, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of had to come to the acceptance of the fact of like, my prioritization through this phase of life needs to be that fueling. So it needed to be a little bit more of having the carbohydrates, and in some cases even timing those. So depending on when I'm running, right? So
Yeah.
if, for example, I think you mentioned earlier you run early in the morning. So, in having more carbohydrates, perhaps having it before bed, not right before bed, but kind of later in the day, so that when you wake up in the morning, whether you're doing it fasted or with some food in your system, that you have a more recent replenishment of those glycogen stores. I think that's important. And so I had to, for myself, for example, from going to, having those higher amounts of protein, I had to accept like, okay, maybe 100 grams of protein a day is fine. And that I focus more on those carbohydrates and all of that. And I'm not going to lie and say that it's still easy, because I mean, dieting is dieting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But just thinking about, when you're intaking things. One other thing that I did that was focused around the run was I have a medium long run midweek and I have a long run at the end of the week. So during those two runs, I would fuel with like a goo or a similar product. And I wouldn't count those calories against my calories. I'm in the middle of doing something that I'm burning 1,000, 1,500, 2,500 calories during this activity. I'm going to allow myself the extra 300 calories worth of use, for example. So that was another thing that was different. And then when you talk about trying to do strength training or weight training, again, it was accepting that I'm not going to be as strong as I was, but I still, try to lift, but for different purpose. So, when I was powerlifting, I would go in and I would lift 4 days a week, usually a little over 2 hours each session. So two to 2.5 hours for 4 sessions per week. Now it's more like twice a week for 30 minutes. And that incorporates a lot more, supersetting drop sets, giant sets, a lot more just really moving. And rather than looking at my split as I used to, where it was, I would lift based on compounds. So I had a squat day, a bench day, a deadlift day, and an overhead press day. And I would train muscles that were
Accessory
relevant to
too.
those lifts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's more of like a upper body, just trying to move through shoulders, chest, arms. And then another day where I'm going in and trying to do some leg work, especially focusing on like isolateral type movements. So like a Bulgarian split squat or something where I'm independently strengthening those legs, and also back work on that day as well. And sometimes there are weeks where I don't even, between I'm running 10 hours worth a week pretty much at this point. So time just gets constrained. And sometimes I'm like, I can only lift once this week. And in that instance, I'm just trying to squeeze in basically a full upper body workout and accept the fact that, I'm doing 70 plus miles a week at this point, 110 plus kilometers a week. My legs are mostly fried all the time.
Yes.
And so I just accept the fact that, like, look, I'm not going to do that much in the way of like focused strength stuff, and kind of deal with that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I totally get it because I had to accept that the gym was not going to be every day for sure, and yeah, those dumbbells and those plates just became a lot heavier to move.
Mm.
You know, everything feels like you feel so frail. I don't know. I guess I feel like what the I don't know. I feel so like sweating to the oldies.
Yeah. Well,
Just
especially if
feeling.
you're still dieting and everything right now too, like you will feel weaker now than once you're plateaued, I guess, at whatever weight that you want to stay at. And once your fueling and everything is evened out, you'll find that you'll kind of gain a little bit of a bump back in strength just from having the better fuel and everything there too. So try not to fret too much as you're going through the dieting phase, because it's not 100% representative of what your actual strength will be at a maintenance calories.
Hey, Fred, you
Yes.
mentioned that
Mhm.
you feel a lack of energy on your runs. Um, I find that, well, I've had a lot of experience running on a ketogenic diet and with no carbs. I've had a lot of experience running on a high carb diet. Um, when I was ketogenic, I was running about 105 miles per week. Um,
Mm.
I averaged probably around 98 miles per week for an entire summer. The and that was all on a ketogenic diet. And you mentioned how your legs would feel a little bit heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, I would say that heavy legs aren't from being underfueled, but from being dehydrated. A lot of
Oh, okay.
times, yeah. So if you can just be on top of your hydration, then you'll get the necessary blood flow to your legs, and that heavy feeling won't be there so much. Um, but if you're feeling a lack of energy, then it's an issue with timing more than anything. So if you
Mm.
are taking carbs right now and carbs are a part of your diet, then the timing is really important. So like Dane mentioned, make sure you take your carbs the day before and then make sure you're topped off and then don't intake carbs on the morning of, because at a certain point, once you introduce glucose to your bloodstream, and then the insulin comes in to take care of that, you get an insulin spike, and then once all that glucose is gone, then you'll have that bonk feeling because of the
Yes.
insulin in your system. So, what you need to do is you need to think about your timing, and like let's say if you're running later on in the day and you had breakfast, then you have to make sure that you time your next meal or your snack so that you don't have a sugar crash, and then later on during the run you have that kind of bonk feeling. There's kind of two aspects to it. One is if you're trying to lose weight and you you go to a specific kind of composition of food, then you have to kind of understand which system that you're going to tap into for your energy. So
Yeah.
on more of a low carb ketogenic diet, then you probably want to stay only fat burning. Make sure your heart rate stays really low on all of your runs. Then you can run forever. You
Mm.
can run for 2 hours or 3 hours even, but you got to run slow. And so if you're
Yeah.
in a base build, and let's say from now until December to your race, and you want to build up some mileage, and for example, Dane is very, very volume focused because we found in his training when he runs too fast, he gets some kind of inflammation. And so, in order to avoid that, we decided to take a strategy where we're gonna reduce the intensity by a lot, but we're going to increase the volume and have it balance out his running fitness. And so, if you take that kind of an approach and you keep your heart rate really low, then you can go low carb. It's okay, and then you train your fat burning system. But when you start getting closer to your race and you have to do more race specific stuff and your heart rate starts to go higher, then you have to start introducing carbs. And so I think having kind of a cycled approach where you're going through like periods of dieting, and you assign specific purpose for your dieting. It could be really helpful. So if you're in a big long base build to increase your mileage, you go really low carb and then really train your fat burning system, and then try to build your volume as high as you can, and then switch to a period of high carb when you get a little bit closer to race day and you're doing more race specific workouts, more interval training, more tempo runs, things like that. That's going to get you breathing harder. Then you're going to need the carbs for sure. And you know what's
Yeah.
what's cool what's cool about it is when you're on that long base build, you'll lose a lot of weight. very, very naturally. You'll be burning a lot of calories, you'll be intaking less carbs and things like that. But once you get to that point where you're ready for those race specific workouts, then you'll be kind of at the weight that you want to be at. And then, like Dane said, once you start intaking those carbs, you're going to feel like a superhero, and you'll have all this energy. And then all those runs that were a little bit more difficult before, when you're kind of pressing, you're on that cusp of going into that next level of speed, then those will feel a lot easier. And like you said, weight does affect performance. And as the weight comes off, you'll find that your easy pace will get faster and faster and faster, which is the same effect that Dane found. Because I think you mentioned that you were running in the 14s, like 14-minute
Yeah.
pace, and then
Hmm.
now you're like in the 9-minute pace. So I think that's a giant uh, testament to your diligence. You probably lost some weight as well, and
Hmm.
just being consistent and staying on top of it and building an aerobic base. Dane, maybe you could talk a little bit about the progression that you made as far as like performance as in terms of paces. Like what were you running in the past, and then what are you running now?
Yeah, for sure. I know it better in kilometers than I do
Sure,
in
sure.
Yeah,
miles
that's
still.
fine. Yeah.
But you know, previously I was running in kilometers, like a 7:30 pace was kind of my everyday easy pace. And even when I had really started again, like on the diet, my pace was even closer to 8 minutes per kilometer. And just through the diet and then eventually through working with MK. By the time I was a couple months into working with MK and I had lost that 80 pounds, I think my easy pace was down to probably like around a 5:30, which is like,
Wow, that's
was it
fast.
like at 8:50, I guess,
Yeah.
minute per mile, became kind of my easy pace. And now my easy paces are, yeah, still maybe around like an 8:40, but I'm noticing a bigger gain on how long I can run
Mm,
for at a faster pace. So this
Yes.
weekend,
Uh-huh.
for example, I had in the middle of a 17-mile long run. I had a 10-mile segment of marathon pace, which was a 7:24, I think, 7:24, something like that. And so now those paces are feeling better and easier. And we're, starting out at trying to do that 7:24 pace, even though my easy pace was similar, I would be able to do like, I remember it was originally like 1 minute on, 1 minute off, 1 minute on, 1 minute off,
Yes.
or 2 minutes
Yes.
on, 1 minute off. And now it's like, I think it was like an hour and 15 minutes that I ran at that pace for straight
mm.
on Sunday. And yeah, so that eventually progresses as well. So, but just the weight loss itself was huge. Like I probably cut more than 30% off my time just by increasing volume and decreasing my body weight. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome to know because yeah, because that's how what I was doing as well. I was doing a walk run program basically. I had this
Mm,
I took my my boxing app and instead of doing rounds for boxing, I started doing rounds for the run. And I
mm.
would I would do a
Good, good.
yeah. So I would have like the bell ringing to tell me, okay, you're gonna walk for 30 seconds and then run for, 2, 3, whatever minutes until I kept building. And then once I was able to get back to running 30, 40, 45 minutes and not having to walk, then I kind of stopped that and then started working on trying to do pacing versus the walk run program. But yeah, I totally get that. And and see that's the knowledge that I'm kind of like what I was searching for because I wasn't sure if I was doing more harm than good trying to keep all these performance stats uh going up and worrying so much about that or putting so much weight into that basket versus putting the emphasis or the weight into the basket of weight loss because um, I guess I was so hyper focused on getting all these like PBs and getting
Right.
better at what at what Dane was saying, as far as not so much about getting faster and faster all the time, but keeping those faster paces for longer periods, right? Because that's really what I'm searching for, because like that's kind of like, I guess in my understanding, the key to improving those marathon times, right? Or those long distance run times, because if you can increase that endurance at those higher speeds, then that's kind of like, the goal at the end of the day, I think. And so that's good to know, because I was very worried about um, going low carb and then having to kind of go backwards in performance in a way, because I can't keep the paces like I can when I'm eating higher amounts of carbs. But hearing you guys, it makes me understand that in a way that right now is kind of short term, because l long term, couple of months down, once I lose that weight, it's like if I'm getting that performance increase anyway.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so that's good. That kind of it helps me not look at it as a bad thing to um to have like those slower paces again,
Sure.
because it's not like it's not gonna count against me per se, as far as like my goals for this stuff, because it'll actually help in the long run, getting that
Absolutely.
that weight off. Yeah, and I think it'll help with my back and everything else as well, because losing weight has allowed me to have more time in between spasmodic episodes,
Mm,
if that's
mm.
like the term for it, which helps, because the longer I can keep those from happening, the longer I can train without having to feel that pain. Because, like, I was also totally understanding what you were saying, MK, about your sciatic pain, because
Mm.
it's the same, like, where it's the same thing. You get that burning and that nerve pain that goes right, like for me, it's down my right leg and right glute, and it is a mess. It's chaos. You
Mm.
can't sleep right. It's like it affects so many things. So I was feeling you on that when you were
Mm.
trying to come back to it after all that, because I know the game too well for that. Yeah.
Well,
So
Fred, I think that one of Dane's key success, or actually his top key success factor, is definitely his patience. Um, During
yeah,
all these 9 months, Dane has never raced. I mean, he's participated in races with his wife, but he's treated them as like fun runs or
fun run.
events, or ways to, or just like to help support his family, right? But
Mm.
but he's been very patient, and for many weeks, I kept apologizing to him. It's like, hey, I'm sorry how this must be so boring, but stick with it. You're so consistent, and I tried to be encouraging and cheer him on in that way. But amazingly, Dane has just been so patient and consistent, and never going out of bounds, never breaking speed limits, and just staying within that, and making very small progressions, like very, but progress a little at a time, and just being very patient to wait and see what the results were after several weeks or after a couple months. And I think that has been his the really big driver of his big success so far, and hitting PBs now, like running his fastest marathon or half marathon within a long run workout. Like
Yeah,
he's doing this like every week pretty much, and he's not laid out for it. Like he's non-tapered. He goes into the next Tuesday and goes about his running week again. And so
yeah,
um, I think that looking at the long term, like you mentioned, Fred, and um, investing in investing in a really solid base and taking it slow and letting the progress come to you, and then enjoying all that fruit,
yeah,
all the reward as it flows in, because it's so fun following Dane on Strava, because it's amazing like how many trophies he gets like every week, and like all the improvement that he's able to achieve. It's fun and it's motivating and it's inspiring. So I think one good thing to do for sure is to follow Dane on Strava,
Yeah,
because if
yeah.
you do that, you'll be motivated. It's really motivating how consistent he is, and you'll see in his annual graph how he made a progression each week, and then how afterwards he stopped increasing volume, and then he started working on intensity. And then, so you can use that as a model as well. It's pretty
Okay.
amazing to see the metrics of the performance metrics of Dane's running on Strava. You can learn a lot from that, and also it's super motivating. And then maybe you can, Dane, maybe could you just let us know at which month, or if you remember at which date that you stabilized your weight and you stopped losing weight?
Yeah, so it was July. So at some point in July, I remember because I was back in Ontario visiting family, but I kind of at that point I was still trying to weigh myself, still weighing my food. I was away there for a month. I got home and I was, yeah, about the same weight towards the end of July, and I've essentially been within 5 pounds or so of that. From increasing total food volume, yeah, it's 5 pounds to the heavier side. But yeah, when I was maintaining just below 225 and now more like 225 to 230. So it's been how long since then? Like six months, something like that, that I've been at a full maintenance, 7 months.
And then do you find yourself counting calories now, or do you just go by feel, or do you just eat whatever you want? Because you're running 70 miles a week on 6 days of running per week.
Yeah, I definitely just eat whatever I want now. I had enough time where I was, having to count everything, and that's
Yeah.
honestly, I can say, probably the best thing because for me, like I love food, and
Yeah.
there's I don't know, I got something in my brain that doesn't want me to stop eating, and so I definitely still ballpark my nutrition during the main part of the day. So before say 5 p.m., like when I'm done work, I'm usually having a best approximation of around 1100, 1200, 1300 calories, something like that. And then yeah, I go home, I have a snack, and then yeah, later I have dinner and whatever snacks I want. If that's chocolate covered almonds or Sour Patch Kids or ice cream or whatever kind of snacks I feel like, that's what I have. Because yeah, running 70 miles a week and being north of 225, I feel good, and I think I run decent for my weight and my current experience level. So.
70
Yeah.
miles per week, over 225 pounds, marathon pace at 7:24 per mile. Um, do you experience a lot of soreness, any pains? Can you share with us the physical health of your body right now?
Yeah, so I kind of, as you alluded to before, sometimes when we did get going faster, I would start to have a little bit more inflammation. I find that right now I generally feel pretty good. I've had some trials using different shoes and stuff, so I would say that's not a total running issue as much as it's just trying to find the right shoe for me as far as plantar fasciitis. But yeah, for my knees, for my I had originally had shin splints. I have
Mm.
had, like I said, inflammation just in different parts, whether it be my lower hamstring or my upper calf. But at no point have I had inflammation, and it's been a cause for me to not be able to run anymore. We've had some small points where we've had to slightly adjust things and just keep volume in there, but adjust pace or what have you. But for the most part, like I mean, right now I feel 100%, and I
Mm.
ran, 17 miles 2 days ago, 10 miles yesterday, and honestly, at this point, doing a 10-mile run is feels, which is weird to say. It actually is to the point where it feels like a recovery run where that used to be like my long run, you know.
Yeah.
Now I'm like,
Wow.
oh yeah, I just ran 10 miles yesterday. Like I'm feeling much better now. Like it's helped me, flush out my legs. So even at being heavier and even at that volume, yeah, the body adjusts, and I really enjoy the way that NK progresses volume, and he's mentioned it in some of his more recent marathon training videos.
Yeah.
Um, but 3 weeks at a distance, 1 mile per run that you're doing during those weeks added on the fourth week. Um, that alone brought me from, I think in May, I was doing maybe 20 miles a week to September, I think was around the time that we had hit that 70-mile-ish mark. So yeah, in a matter of months, in like 4 months, we 3.5x how much I was running. But I was able to do it and not get, drastically injured or not have any major issues or anything like that. So
Fred, during your progression, you're gonna find that you're gonna run into some niggles here and there, run into some obstacles and some pains. Um, and and like Dane mentioned, he did run into some problems with certain body parts, and we did have to make some adjustments. And um, I think a really good mentality to have for you is to be ready for that and to make some changes. Because right now, Dane is at the thickest part of his training and the most intense part of his training, and he's 100%. Like he's not feeling anything. And it's because we really took a lot of time to communicate to each other, to find out what are the stressors, and then make the necessary adjustments so that we can continue progressing, but to avoid the things that cause the inflammation. So if you
Yeah.
could just be really, really kind of self-aware and be sensitive to that, and then never ever stop. Like, oh, I feel this, so I'm not going to run. That's not the right attitude to have. Instead,
Yeah.
what can I change to reduce whatever cause, what was the causative event that brought about this small niggle or this inflammation? And then work around that causative event, but keep on moving, keep the circulation going, keep the blood flow, and that way you can continue to heal that area, strengthen that area. Never avoid, if your back hurts, then you need to do more for your back, right? We can't rest the
Yeah.
back, it'll get worse.
Right.
So
hmm
I think um, keep flexible and keep malleable, and then you'll find the sweet spot. And then once you do, you'll feel like a Superman, like Dane is he's actually a caricature of Superman.
Well, he looks like it too.
yeah, I would
Yeah,
Awesome.
say
that's
too, like
awesome.
one of my biggest surprises, like MK says, it's like don't just stop. Is I would, the couple of times I did have, a little bit of inflammation here or there, feel like something really, was strained. And I would be like, oh, okay, like I'm thinking, okay, I take some days off, whatever. And he's like, go and just run 5 miles easy pace instead of 10 miles. Like, let's, just go and try it and whatever. And at first I was like, man, like, what are you talking about? Like, it hurts. But like, and then I do it and then I'm like, oh, it feels a little bit better. And then within a couple of days, rather than weeks, I was able to at least get back to full volume again. And
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
from there, just took it by feel as far as getting back into speed. But yeah, keeping moving, keeping blood flowing through areas and everything has been yeah, surprising revelation coming from a it feels a little off, like let's not touch it for a little while type mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally understand that. And I think everything you're saying is like right on par with what I've experienced the last year. Because as I've been trying to increase, intensity and volume, I'll hit little pains here and there. But you're right. Pushing through it and just working on trying to strengthen wherever I felt the pain. Like I think for a little bit I was feeling like right hip pain, so I started putting in some band work
Mm,
and some leg raises and things like that just to try and strengthen um, the different glute muscles and the hip flexors and stuff like that, and that would do the trick, and then I can keep going,
mm,
and so I was kind of doing that same approach, not necessarily stopping 100%, but just trying to address wherever the pain was, whatever muscles were around where the pain was, I would just start trying to do some type
mm.
of like rehab work. And and that would do the trick. Yeah, so I totally get that and totally understand that and for sure. So um yeah, I guess my last question would be like what you were saying, MK, let the fitness come to me. I feel like I've been trying to chase the fitness
Mhm.
all this last year. And so I guess I think maybe the best move would be, since I have so much time till um till that marathon in December, um, I guess I should be focusing on, like you were saying, just lower intensity, uh, keeping the mileage, but lower intensity, and kind of focusing on doing that ketogenic style um, diet in order to get the body comp that would work, but at the same time, still keep my fitness and hopefully increase in that volume.
Yeah, I think diet also is really personal preference. Like for example, I know people who would just be miserable on a ketogenic diet, and then they're not going to be successful. And so
Yeah,
I think if you just find the diet that works for you, and then keep your if you're not going to go at a deficit, but maybe keep it consistent and let your fitness help you shed some weight, like a little bit more
yeah,
slowly. Or if you're a little bit more aggressive about it, more active, then go at a calorie deficit, and but use the diet that works best for you, that
yeah.
supports your mental health, your spirit, because the more positive you are, the more successful you'll be for your runs, and
Yes.
you'll also be better company to your family.
I
but
mean, you're right. Yes, you're right.
but yeah, like let that be personal, and then yeah, and just kind of take a longer term approach, and you try to model your base build after Dane, like the way that he did it, because I'm sure you'll be able to see where your volume overlaps. If you're at around 30 to 40 miles now, you can see where he was at 30, 40 miles, and try to mirror that.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
then get yourself to a point where you can get to a little bit higher volume. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you are a young high school runner, very athletic, and you come from some kind of running base like basketball or soccer, then I would say, hey, just run 40 miles a week, and then I'll put you on a very high intensity program because I know that you can do it. And then, because why run more than that? Why invest more time into it if you don't need to?
Right.
It would just be a waste. And it could also demotivate you because you're spending so much time for small gains. And but we're not. We're north of 200 pounds, and we're on in our age, and
Yeah.
lower intensity is a little bit more required to keep us moving and to keep us healthy. And
Yeah.
but the the great thing about it, the fair thing about it is that the kid who is super young, who has really high ability to recover, has really high tendon stiffness, and is super explosive. Like that kid can run. You can run as fast as that kid as the distance increases. So when you go into
Yeah.
the marathon, that's the equalizer. And so
Yeah.
maybe you can't do speed workouts like that kid can, but you can put in more volume and more mileage, and then in the end, you will have more endurance than that kid, and then you'll be able to sustain it at a much lower heart rate than that kid, and then you can finish the marathon at an equal time as that kid. So
Yeah.
the distance
Yeah.
is the equalizer. The distance is the equalizer, and that's been proven uh, in plot charts that, like, for example, Canada does put in thousands and thousands of runners into a plot chart, and what they discovered was that there is this, if you put in all of the miles, all of the paces of any one runner, then it comes out into this straight line graph of there is a certain amount of volume that's necessary at a certain pace to run a certain time in the marathon. And then what they found was that if you have high volume and you run slow, you can run an equal finish time as a person who runs low volume but fast. And so
Mm.
like there is this correlation, and it equalizes the playing field, and that's why we see so many people at the marathon, and so much diversity, and like so much diversity within all of the paces. So whether you are a 2:30 marathoner, there'll be young and old there, or whether you're a 5:30 marathoner, there'll be young and old there as well.
Yes. Yeah, I totally, yeah, I totally believe it because I mean, even in this race on Saturday, there was a 65-year-old man who was doing like 6:05 minute miles. Like I was like at 65, that's just for me, that's amazing. That's superhero.
That's you. That can be you.
Right. Hopefully. Yeah, so I totally get that. Yeah, for sure. And you also see that in ultra marathoning too, where the
Yes.
the the advantages that males would have in shorter distances all gets equalized over the
Uh,
female. It
uh,
gets equalized at the longer distances. That doesn't
right.
matter
As
anymore.
distance
Yeah,
increases, yes, for
that's
sure.
right.
For
Yeah,
sure.
so that's the equalizer as well. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and that is motivating as well. You
Mm.
know. For sure. Yeah, I love it. Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah, the other
Fred, do
thing
you
I
have
was going to say, sorry, real
okay.
quick, is just when you're thinking about your like your training, you talked about kind of trying to get a more linear progression towards speed, and just trying to think about it as like same with like from bodybuilding or from powerlifting, like you have on seasons and off seasons, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
your targets and your goals during those different times are different, and the same is true of running. And so that you kind of have to get into that mindset going into it as well as like if you're a ways out from a race, maybe it's more of like a quote unquote off season where you're base building, and so you're just
Mm,
building up mileage as opposed to just trying to build up speed.
Yeah.
And kind of to MK's point, yeah, if you get a chance to dig through my Strava information, I was kind of just following what what he told me to do, but yeah, you get the general idea of you can see it where it's volume is going up, 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 up. And then suddenly, if you look at each week, it's the similar distance, but suddenly the time starts going down. So total
Mm,
running time per week as my paces start getting faster and whatever. Um, yeah, so it's interesting, but just thinking about it as different phases as opposed to
yeah.
trying to get faster and focus on your volume and focus on your weight and whatever. It's okay. Maybe right now you focus on your weight and your volume, but trying to
mm,
do everything at once, like the speed
mm.
will come,
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right.
and you will have like a pre-marathon prep phase to enhance that speed.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, just emphasizing not worrying about that part so much right away.
mm.
Yeah, no, that
Awesome
yeah,
advice.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like the plan. And that's pretty much what my takeaway in our conversation has been that there's a time for everything and a phase for everything, like you were saying,
Mm,
Dane. It's easy to visualize that concept when we compare it to the macro and micro cycles we used to do in powerlifting. It's kind of like that same concept, same idea where you're not constantly maxing out and going all out to try and get these PBs on the different lifts. There's a time to kind of like build that tendon strength and all that stuff. So yeah, it's easy to visualize when we put it in that context.
And MK had kind of mentioned me being patient as far as not pushing and doing a race or whatever. And I think a lot of that comes from my time in powerlifting, where I
Mhm.
people would ask like, "Oh, like what can you lift right now?" And I'll be like,
Yeah, yeah,
8 months ago when I competed last, or a year ago when I competed last, this is what I did. I haven't maxed out since then because the risk to reward is just not worth it.
Right.
on the big goal, the end goal, right? And
Right.
so that's why MK said now, like you'll see in some of my runs, like my midweek long run kind of thing, suddenly I'm hitting a 5K PR. And it's not because I can't run that fast or that even now I couldn't run faster than that, but unless it's a part of the bigger plan, there's no reason to. There's no point in
Yeah.
putting that extra strain and that extra risk. So,
Yeah. That's a good point, and I like that. Yes, you're right. I mean, the risk versus reward scale. That's true. That's very true.
yeah, so just
Hmm.
being patient and doing those all out efforts, especially as someone that's a little bit heavier, like not
Yeah.
that 220 is heavy, but compared to a runner, compared to a
Right.
140-pound person,
Yes.
we're moving more, and that's just what it is. And so that risk to reward, I think, is kind of multiplicative as far as the risk. So where someone might go and do, push hard on a park run every Saturday, for someone who's 220, 230, I just don't think it's as good of an idea.
Yeah.
It's prepare the body to push when it's time to push, but no reason to risk that injury or whatever before then.
Definitely right. Definitely valuable advice there coming from a world record holder.
That's right.
I think everybody will listen to you, Mr. Dillon. If we ever do a race together, then and we're hanging out, I'll feel like the safest person on earth hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have, the three of us all running together.
Yeah, man, that would be cool.
Hey, Fred, and Dane, thank you so much for spending time with or taking this time out of your day to share your own stories and to help each other and be supportive of each other and to be there for all the encouragement and advice and just sharing your story. Fred, like your story is really inspiring to me as well. I love doing what my family does on YouTube and offline and things like that because we constantly get to meet people like you and who are going out there doing really, really hard things and trying to improve your own life. And I think that is super inspiring. And I get to witness that and see that at all different stages of many, many different people. And I feel very fortunate. So thank you for letting me peer into a little bit about your life and allowing both of us to share in that. Really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I'm really the one that's very thankful because I'm the main benefactor, I think, in this meeting, man. I was actually surprised that you would reach out and offer yourself to do that, and that Dane would be willing to take time out of his schedule to do that. I mean, I think that's super awesome, and I think only a special kind of person would be willing to do that. Just to help out somebody they just met 2 seconds ago. So so I really appreciate you guys taking your time out and offering great solid advice and yeah, just so happy to help somebody who's in the same boat, because just like you, MK, you're fighting, you're doing hard things, trying to work out and train the family despite pain and everything else. You're still out there and doing your thing, and I can appreciate the struggle bus of shopping every day, cooking every day, managing the household. I mean, it's taxing, and it's a lot of work that people don't see, that's outside of the running, that everybody, that's kind of like the main focus on YouTube, at least, from what people see about you. And same for Dane. I mean, I know he's a busy guy. He's got the channels and he's doing his thing and working hard. And sometimes it's kind of like an invasion of privacy a little bit to kind of talk about the struggles and training regimens and all that. So I think that's awesome. and that you guys would do that for me. I'm very appreciative for sure. Yeah.
We'll keep crushing those miles, Fred.
Yeah, man. That's the goal.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here and appreciative of having both you guys here as well. You know, I learn something every time I talk to MK, and you know, Fred, it's my first time talking to you, but I've learned some from you as well. So it's yeah, always great to experience, and more than happy to help convert some more people over to running.
That's right.
Awesome.
Come on.
Awesome.